Deep in the heart of Mexico lies a sprawling metropolis that has been lost to time. Teotihuacan was one of the largest cities in the world during its heyday, boasting the tallest pyramid ever constructed and housing more than 200,000 people. But by the year 1520, the city had been abandoned. That would make it around 2,000 years old, which is actually relatively young compared to other ancient cities, like Rome, which was founded in 753 BC, but unlike Rome, we don't know anything about how it came to be. When archaeologists first explored the pyramids, they found that both pyramids were hollow. The structure known as the Temple of the Feathered Serpent is one of the oldest buildings in the city. It turns out that the temple was built over a much older structure. Dates back to 300 BC. This suggests that the original building may have been destroyed by a natural disaster or an enemy tribe. It turns out that the Mesoamericans had a much better understanding of the solar calendar than we did. This is in stark contrast to the neighboring Maya civilization, who kept detailed records of their history on stone tablets. But the Teotihuacaners didn't seem interested in recording their own history. Be sure to hit the like button for more videos. In fact, the only reason we know anything about them is because the Spanish chroniclers took an interest in their legacy. But the chroniclers weren't interested in recording history or culture. They were only interested in finding gold. And that's one of the biggest mysteries surrounding the city. Where did all the Teotihuacanos go? In fact, they were so accurate that their calendar is about 52 years longer than our own. To make matters even more confusing, they also had a sacred calendar that consisted of 260 days. This meant that the Mesoamericans had 3 different calendars. There was the sacred calendar, the solar calendar, and some sort of ritual calendar that tracked agricultural cycles. Unfortunately, researchers have no idea how the 3 calendars worked together, but they do know that they were extremely accurate. The solar calendar was only off by 52 years, which is equivalent to the number of years it takes for the phases of Venus to align with the phases of the Moon. But how did the Mesoamericans manage to develop such an accurate calendar? Did they use advanced technology? Or did they simply observe the stars more closely than we did? And more importantly, why did they abandon their advanced calendar when the Spanish arrived? But there is no way to know for sure, since the site was abandoned long before the Spanish arrived, and the Spanish weren't exactly in the business of preserving ancient artifacts. So what happened to the 200,000 people who once called the city home? One theory is that the people simply picked up and moved to a new city. But that doesn't explain why they would abandon such a magnificent city. Another theory is that the city was destroyed by an earthquake or a volcanic eruption. But there's no evidence of either a disaster. In fact, archaeologists have found no evidence that any major event occurred after the city was abandoned. And that's a mystery that may never be solved. In fact, many of the temples and palaces in Teotihuacan were destroyed by the Spanish conquistadors, and that's one of the reasons why so little is known about the city. Unlike the Maya and the Aztec civilizations, the Teotihuacanos left behind no written records, no artwork, and not even a single inscription. In fact, the only reason we know how to pronounce the name Teotihuacan is because the Spanish adapted the name from We have no idea what the people who lived there called themselves or what language they spoke, and that brings us to the next big mystery. It was built between 100 BC and 258 and is decorated with sculptures of the feathered serpent god Quetzal. We do know that the writing system consisted of about 400 symbols and that it was primarily used for recording numbers and keeping track of time. But we do not know if the writing system was used for anything else, like storytelling or record keeping. In fact, we do not even know for sure if the writing system was actually a writing system or just a form of accounting. That's because none of the inscriptions have been found on large monuments or buildings. Instead, They've been found on clay tablets and pieces of pottery. The only exception is a stone slab known as the calendar stone, which contains dozens of mysterious inscriptions. Researchers believe the stone may have been used as a ceremonial altar, but they can't agree on what the inscriptions actually say. Some researchers believe the text on the calendar refers to the creation of the world, while others say it contains a prophecy about the end of days. But without being able to read the script, we may never know for sure. But that's not all. The temple also contains some strange astronomical alignments. Archaeologists noticed that one of the doorways in the temple is aligned with a rising sun on the summer solstice. They also found that the entrance to a staircase inside the pyramid aligns with the Pleiades star cluster. It's unclear how the ancient builders managed to achieve such accuracy, especially considering the fact that they didn't use any sophisticated tools like telescopes or even the wheel. It's possible that the Mesoamericans used simple tools and sheer ingenuity to measure the sky. Or maybe they had access to advanced technology that we haven't discovered yet. This meant that instead of serving as tombs, they probably served some other purpose. More recent excavations have revealed that the interior of the pyramids were filled with hundreds of rooms, and researchers believe that the chambers may have been used to store artifacts and precious metals. But some researchers think the chambers could have been used for something else entirely. Researchers discovered a network of tunnels beneath the city that may have once been used to conduct human sacrifices. The tunnels run for more than 400 yards. Underneath the main plaza, end abruptly at the base of the Pyramid of the Sun. There are several openings along the tunnel that lead down into the earth, and archaeologists believe the openings may have once contained sacrificial pits. It's unclear exactly what the tunnels were used for, but they may have played an important role in religious ceremonies. The only thing we know is that the city was situated on the edge of the Valley of Mexico. But why did the early Mesoamericans settle here? One theory is that Teotihuacan began as a small agricultural village that grew into a larger settlement, when nearby settlements were destroyed by a series of volcanic eruptions. But who these people were and where they came from is a mystery. All we know is that they were skilled farmers and craftspeople who knew how to read the stars and build magnificent pyramids. And for over 300 years, its very existence was forgotten until it was rediscovered by modern archaeologists. The Pyramid of the Sun is the largest pyramid ever built. At its base, it measures 700 feet wide and 1,400 feet long, making it larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. If the Egyptians made a pyramid to serve as the tomb of an ancient king, then whoever built the Pyramid of the Sun must have been a god. But there's one even bigger mystery surrounding the pyramids. According to Mexican legend, the pyramids weren't built but rather grew out of the ground like living things. Some say the pyramids were the result of divine intervention, while others say they were created using advanced technology, like by harnessing the power of crystals or by using machines like rollers and levers. But regardless of how they were constructed, there's no denying that these pyramids are among the greatest feats of engineering in human history. Yet despite the fact that this ancient civilization is so well preserved, we know almost nothing about it because they left behind no written records and virtually no trace of their language. But that doesn't mean they didn't leave behind some mysteries. In fact, there are still many things about this lost city that modern archaeologists can't explain. From the reason the entire city was abandoned to the meaning of their mysterious calendar, here are 5 of the biggest mysteries of Mexico's lost metropolis, starting with what may have led to its construction in the first place. The origins of the city of Teotihuacan are largely unknown. What we do know is that the city dates back to sometime before 100 BC. In fact, 2 of the most impressive structures at the site are undoubtedly the pyramids of the Moon and the Sun. But the question is, what purpose did they serve? Speaking of religion, there's another structure in Teotihuacan that still has researchers scratching their heads. But there's one last thing that makes the Temple of the Feathered Serpent even more mysterious. Researchers still haven't been able to decipher the mysterious writing system used by the Teotihuacan. And speaking of the calendar, there's one aspect of it that has completely baffled As we said earlier, the Teotihuacanos didn't leave behind any written records that could shed light on their culture and way of life. By 1520, the city had been completely abandoned, but the Spanish didn't find it until nearly 200 years later. Thanks for watching.